original Candyman was released in 1992. Candyman came out when the horror genre in its entirety was in a kind of limbo. It had two sequels in 1995 and 1999, but neither are really noteworthy, and now in 2021, it's receiving the sequel treatment again, this time with a film that will directly follow the original, I think. The oversaturation of slasher films from the two previous decades had led general audiences to have little faith in the horror genre, as by that point, pretty much every scary movie being released was the same movie. Among the horror greats, or classics, people typically cite Friday the 13th, Halloween, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. But there are plenty of others that lent to this oversaturation, though that isn't to say they were all bad. There was Hellraiser, another Clive Barker story, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which began a subgenre of its own, Child's Play, a plethora of zombie films, many of which contained plenty of topical social commentary, or even the Exorcist films, of which there are many more than I think people realize. The point to all of this is that when Candyman came out, it really didn't get a fair shake. It clearly had an impact, and hasn't gone entirely unsung or anything like that, but I don't think it gets the credit it deserves and the credit that it earned. Among Jason, Michael Myers, Freddy, Leatherface, Pinhead, and all the other iconic figures from horror that the Candyman could be counted amongst, I think he's the most compelling by far, and deserves a lot more recognition. Something I hope this new sequel might lead to. Clive Barker's short story, The Forbidden, made many statements of its own in regards to the power of urban legends, but The Forbidden and Candyman are two very different stories, with very different aims. Candyman sought to bring race relations into the discussion. It looked to bring up and put a number of social issues in the spotlight. And as far as many of its grand ambitions are concerned, it succeeded. But that isn't to say it's flawless as a film, or with the execution of said goals. Bernard Rose directed Candyman with some real excellence. There is remarkable creativity present in each and every aspect of filmmaking throughout the film's entire runtime, with some scenes enhanced purely by atmosphere, and others containing either great and legitimate jump scares, or some truly palpable body horror. The script was written by Rose as well, and while not every single line of dialogue is the most subtle, the characters and their interactions, for the most part, feel very genuine, and as if these are real people that we're following. There's only one real problem that I see with the behind-the-scenes production of Candyman. The film is written, directed, and produced by white men only. That isn't to say that the movie was inherently or instantly negatively affected, and that isn't to say that anything about the film should have been changed. I love the movie as is, and so do many others, but I do think that a story that wanted to bring racism and the disenfranchising of Black Americans into the spotlight could have benefited from the perspective of some, Black Americans. Plenty of cast members and key characters, Tony Todd being the obvious example, were Black, and I'm sure were not disregarded or ignored with any creative input. But the way in which Helen's character is portrayed in terms of Daniel Robitaille's lore feels slightly troublesome, as if the Candyman's entire plight in life is the acquiring of some white goddess. Aside from some minor criticisms though, I might argue on behalf of Candyman being one of the best horror films ever made. Certainly the best out of all the ones that might be considered classics within the slasher genre. I guess, depending on how one might feel about whether or not Alien is a kind of slasher. The acting is pretty great across the board, with the man Tony and Virginia Madsen really being show stealers. Philip Glass's score, and particularly the film's theme, are exceptional. It's well shot, well edited, and has many layers to peel back. By no means is Candyman any run-of-the-mill horror film. The idea that Candyman would flourish in the projects is a fairly depthy statement in itself to make in a film. The projects are a safe environment for Candyman. A place where not all the privileges of society are present. A place where the idea that he could in fact exist isn't seen as preposterous. It's seen as one of the community's greatest threats. What the Candyman is meant to represent or mean is not definitive, in my opinion. Is he a reflection of the horrors that resulted from slavery and racism at its very start in America? How they exist across centuries and affect people even still? Is he a nod to the power that stories can have? how when a group is marginalized and had society or the government turn its back on them, these kinds of stories or myths can take on a new power and become even a testament to a lifestyle or place. Does he represent the real power of truth? Each time I watch and rewatch Candyman, I always find myself wondering at least something. And that's what's beautiful about filmmaking. Nia DaCosta and Jordan Peele will be bringing a new perspective to Candyman. And while some of the characters from the original will be returning, it does seem that the new film will have plenty of changes for audiences to consume. I'm rooting for the film. The original Candyman is well worth every minute. I hope the new one will be too. Thank you kindly for watching. Be better than you were yesterday. See ya.